When I first noticed something was off, it didn't come crashing down all at once. It crept in slow, like fog over the cliffs outside the lighthouse. My name is Colton Mathers. I'm 52 years old, and I live in Camden, Maine. I've worked as a lighthouse keeper for most of my life. One of the last ones left who still mans a post. People think it's lonely, but honestly, it's the only place that's ever made sense to me. The shift ended like any other. I closed up, signed off the log, and made the short drive back to our little house nestled just above the bluff. The porch light was on. Evelyn always left it for me. It used to mean something. I stepped inside, waiting for the usual. A smile, a kiss on the cheek, a plate warming in the oven. Instead, I got a glance from the living room couch. Not even a full one. Just a brief, distracted nod before she turned back to her tablet. "Hey," I said. She murmured, then got up and disappeared into the back room. No kiss. No "how was your day?" Nothing. I stood there, boots still wet with seawater, staring at the spot where she'd been. Maybe she was tired. She'd mentioned not sleeping well. The next couple of days, it continued. She'd leave early for errands and come back late. Say she forgot to text. When I talked, she'd answer in clipped phrases or not at all. Our dinners were silent. Not tense exactly, more like hollow. "Everything okay?" I asked her one night. She blinked, like she hadn't expected me to speak. "Yeah, fine. Just tired." But she didn't look tired. She looked distant, like she was already somewhere else. I started making excuses for her. Maybe it was the season. Maine winters hit hard. Maybe she needed space. I even wondered if I'd done something wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on anything. Still, I tried not to push. Some nights I'd sit on the porch and watch the water, just to avoid the house. She still cooked, still did laundry, still asked me if I needed anything when she left for the grocery store. But everything felt like a performance, like she was checking boxes. I couldn't remember the last time she touched me just because she wanted to. The silence between us grew dense, almost physical. I'd come home and feel it pressing down like salt air before a storm. And yet, I kept telling myself it would pass. It always had before. I didn't know it then, but I wasn't waiting out a season. I was watching something slowly die. The night it all cracked open started like most others, cold and quiet. It was mid-January, the kind of evening when the wind whips so hard off the Atlantic it makes the windows moan. I'd gotten home a little after 6, still half frozen from the walk out to the signal tower and back. Evelyn was already sitting at the table, a bowl of soup in front of her, steam curling up around her face like a veil. "Smells good," I said, hanging up my coat. She didn't look up. "It's lentil." I sat across from her, trying not to let the silence feel as heavy as it was. We ate like two strangers on a train, quiet, watching opposite windows. Halfway through my soup, I set my spoon down. I don't even know what made me do it. Maybe it was habit, or hope, or just desperation wearing a mask. I reached across the table, slow and careful, like I was approaching a wild animal. My fingers grazed hers. "Hey," I said softly, "I miss you." That's all I said. Nothing dramatic. Just 3 plain words that felt too small to carry what I meant. Evelyn jerked her hand back like I'd burned her. "Don't start this again," she snapped, standing up so fast her chair screeched across the floor. I sat there, stunned, my hand still outstretched. "What did I?" I said don't, she cut in. "God, Colton, not everything has to turn into a big emotional moment." She grabbed her bowl and stalked off toward the kitchen. I heard the clatter of dishes, louder than it needed to be. I didn't follow. Later that night, we lay side by side in bed, or rather, on 2 separate islands sharing a mattress. Her back was to me, shoulders stiff, the blankets pulled up high like armor. I stared at the ceiling, counting the slow spins of the fan. "Ev," I said quietly, "did I do something? Something I don't know about." She didn't move. For a second, I thought maybe she'd fallen asleep. But then she rolled over halfway, just enough to meet my eyes in the dark. "I can't stand the sight of you," she said flatly, like she was reading the weather. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She just said it, clear and calm and merciless. I didn't say anything back. What could I have said? She turned away again, and I stayed awake the rest of the night, listening to the sea crash against the cliffs and wondering if I was still in my own life. It wasn't the anger that broke me. It was the finality in her voice, like a door that had been closed and locked without a sound. And that's when I knew I wasn't sleeping beside my wife anymore. I was sleeping beside a stranger. I stopped asking questions because I couldn't take the lies anymore. After that night in bed, after the way she looked at me like I was something rotting on the side of the road, something inside me shut off. Whatever was left of my pride told me not to beg again. I couldn't force her to love me, and I sure as hell wasn't going to keep humiliating myself trying to. But that didn't mean I stopped caring. I started noticing everything. Evelyn would come home with her coat inside out, like she'd rushed to put it on. She'd take long, sudden naps in the afternoon, crashing hard in the bedroom, sometimes with her shoes still on. Her eating was all over the place. She'd skip breakfast one day, then devour a plate of scrambled eggs at midnight the next. Her mood swung like a broken weather vane. Then there were the mornings. I'd hear her in the bathroom, quietly gagging behind the closed door. At first, I figured it was stress, maybe even a virus going around. But when I asked if she was okay, she barely looked up from the sink. "I'm fine," she mumbled. "Just tired." That became her answer for everything. One night, she came home hours late, said she'd been stuck in town behind a broken-down bus. I wanted to believe her, but her hair was too neat. Her cheeks were flushed, like she'd just come in from dancing. That was when I called Dan. Dan used to run Harbor Patrol back in the day. Now he did small-time PI work, mostly cheating spouses and insurance claims. He was blunt, discreet, and exactly what I needed. "You sure about this?" he asked when I met him in the back booth of Granger's Diner. I nodded. "Just want to know the truth. Nothing more." Dan gave me a long look. "Nothing less, either." I slid an envelope across the table. "Keep it quiet." He did. A week later, he called me from a blocked number. No small talk. It's another man. Same car, same schedule. He picks her up a few blocks from the grocery store on Tuesdays and Thursdays. They don't go far. Motel off Route 1. Nothing fancy. No questions at the desk. I didn't ask his name. Didn't want photos. I already had what I came for. That night, I didn't go home right away. I climbed back up the tower and sat in the lantern room, watching the beams swing wide over the water. I listened to the creak of the metal, the wind brushing the glass. It was strange how quiet betrayal felt when it finally settled in. Not a storm, not a slam of the door, just a slow exhale. I didn't tell her I knew. There wasn't any point. I just sat there in that lighthouse, calm as a man waiting for sunrise, and started planning her exit. Quietly, deliberately, just like she'd planned mine. It was a Wednesday when I left the lighthouse early. Not for anything dramatic, just paperwork. I needed the old deed to the house for the divorce lawyer. She said it'd speed things up if I could find the original copy instead of the scanned version. Evelyn wasn't home. Her car was gone, like it had been most days lately. I told myself it was better that way. The file cabinet was buried in the back of the closet under winter coats we hadn't worn in years. I dug through manila envelopes, tax folders, a bundle of yellowing bills. It was all there, exactly where I remembered, except for one small, unmarked envelope tucked behind a drawer that didn't slide out all the way. I didn't mean to snoop. I really didn't. But I saw my name scribbled in Evelyn's handwriting on the flap. Not Colton, just C, like how she used to sign notes on the fridge when we first moved in. I opened it. Inside was a black and white ultrasound photo, dated just over 3 weeks ago. The kind with grainy shadows and little arrows pointing to the head, the spine, the heartbeat. I sat down on the edge of the bed, that picture balanced in my shaking hands. It felt like the air got sucked right out of the room. She was pregnant. Pregnant. And I didn't know. The dates flicked through my brain like flashcards. When had she gotten sick in the mornings? When had she started sneaking away? How long had she been gone each Tuesday and Thursday? And most important, when was the last time we'd even been close? My stomach turned. This wasn't mine. Not unless the calendar was lying. The first wave that hit me wasn't anger, it was disbelief. Then confusion. Then, finally, something colder. Something harder. She wasn't just cheating. She was carrying a secret inside her every single day, sleeping beside me with it, pretending, and hiding it. No note. No conversation. Just a sealed envelope shoved in the back of a drawer like I'd never matter enough to know. I put the ultrasound back in the envelope, closed the drawer, and stood. By the time Evelyn walked through the door that night, I already knew what I was going to do. No more waiting. I wasn't going to pretend this house wasn't on fire just because she was standing in it. I needed the truth. All of it. Tonight. The sun was already gone when she came home. I was sitting in the living room with the ultrasound envelope on the table in front of me. I hadn't turned on any lights. Just the soft orange glow of the porch lamp spilling in through the window, enough to see her face when she walked in. Evelyn stepped inside, setting her keys in the bowl like always. Then she froze, eyes adjusting to the dim room. "You scared me," she said, half laughing. I didn't move. "How long have you known you were pregnant?" She blinked. The silence between us stretched so tight I could feel it hum in my ears. "What?" I said. I repeated, slower this time. "How long have you known?" Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at the table, saw the envelope, and I watched the blood drain from her face. It's not, Colton. I was going to tell you." "When?" I asked. "After the baby came? After the divorce? Or just never?" She dropped her purse on the floor, hands shaking now. I didn't know how. "No," I said, standing. "You didn't want to." "Big difference." She took a step forward. "It's complicated." "Is it mine?" I said it plain, steady. No theatrics. Just the one question I needed answered. Her jaw clenched. She looked down at the floor like it might help her lie. I waited. She opened her mouth, closed it. Then finally, quietly, she whispered, "I don't know." That landed harder than anything else. I nodded once, slow. "All right, Colton." "No," I said, holding up a hand. "You don't get to speak now. I've spent the last few months talking to a ghost, coming home to a woman who treats me like furniture. I reached for you, Evelyn. I tried. I asked. And you looked me in the face and told me you couldn't stand the sight of me." Her eyes welled up. "I didn't mean it." "But you said it," I snapped. "And now I find out you're pregnant with a baby that might not even be mine? After everything?" "I was scared," she said, her voice cracking. "I didn't plan this. I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want to deal with me," I corrected. She walked toward the couch, slow and hesitant, like that might undo the damage. "Please, let's just talk about this." I took a folded set of papers from the drawer behind me and set them on the table, right next to the scan. "Here," I said. "You'll be getting the real copy from my lawyer next week." She stared at them. "Divorce?" I met her eyes. "Yeah." Her voice broke. "Colton, don't do this." I didn't blink. I already did. She started to cry, not loud, not desperate. Just silent, crumpled sobs she didn't bother to hide anymore. But I didn't move. I didn't hold her. I didn't tell her it would be okay. Because it wouldn't. Her tears came too late. The divorce didn't take long to turn ugly. I expected a clean break. Quiet papers, mutual signatures, maybe a few uncomfortable meetings with lawyers. But Evelyn had other plans. The moment she realized I wasn't going to fall apart, she switched gears from guilt to war. Her lawyer sent over a letter demanding partial ownership of the coastal property, spousal support, and access to my retirement accounts. Said she had contributed significantly to the household during the marriage and deserved compensation for the life she helped build. Funny thing was, she hadn't helped build a damn thing. I let my attorney, Sarah Kent, handle it. She was sharp, quiet, and not easily rattled, the kind of woman who didn't waste breath on nonsense. I gave her everything, the timeline, the scan, the private investigator's report. She listened without judgment, took notes, and said calmly, "She's got no leg to stand on." Good. Evelyn, on the other hand, kept pushing. Her lawyer sent more letters, offers, threats, statements that tried to paint me as controlling, emotionally distant. At one point, she even claimed the lighthouse job made me volatile and isolated, which would complicate his ability to be a parent. That one made me laugh out loud. I didn't say a word to her during any of it. Not when she called 3 times in a row. Not when she sent an email saying we shouldn't let this get mean. And definitely not when she showed up outside the lighthouse one morning, standing in the cold like some forgotten statue, waiting for me to come out. I didn't. I let her knock. Then I let her leave. When the DNA test results came in, Sarah called me personally. "Do you want me to read it?" she asked. "Just tell me," I said. "It's not yours." I didn't say anything for a long time. "Colton." "I figured," I replied. And I had. But hearing it out loud still felt like someone closing a door I hadn't realized was open. A week later, Evelyn dropped the spousal support request. Another week, and she stopped contesting the property. By the time we stood in court, she didn't say a word. Not to me. Not to the judge. Just nodded, quiet, defeated. The ruling was clean and final. Everything stayed in my name. She walked out with nothing but a last name she'd never bothered to change. Sarah packed up the folders beside me and said, "You got everything you asked for." "Doesn't feel like a win," I muttered. "It's not a win," she said. "It's closure." She was right. Walking out of that courthouse, I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. Like I'd finally finished digging out of something that never should have buried me in the first place. Evelyn never looked back. Neither did I. Months passed. Life settled into something quiet, not peaceful exactly, but still. I kept working the lighthouse, same shifts, same logbooks. Spent more time walking the bluff, fixing up the shed out back, making my own coffee instead of 2. It was a life pared down to the basics. Nothing extra. Nothing soft. People in town stopped asking about Evelyn after a while. They always said her name like it might cut something on the way out. I didn't correct them. I let them wonder. Then one afternoon, I stopped into Lewis's Hardware to pick up some replacement lamp fittings. On my way out, a woman I didn't know, maybe late 60s, thick glasses, silver curls, stopped me on the sidewalk. "You're Colton, right?" she asked, careful but curious. I nodded. "That's me." She hesitated. "You were married to Evelyn Royce?" I looked at her for a moment before answering. "Was." She lowered her voice like we were on church steps. "I heard what happened. I'm sorry. It's not my business, but, well, folks talk. You probably already know that." I gave a half smile. "Yeah, they do." She nodded, fidgeted with her purse strap, then said, "You probably don't care to hear this, but she told him she was pregnant." The man. I didn't ask how she knew. In towns like Camden, stories rolled downhill faster than the truth. She thought he'd step up? I asked. The woman gave a small, sad laugh. She thought he'd propose. Instead, he told her to deal with it. Said he had a family already. Said it was never supposed to get that serious. I stood there for a moment, the wind catching the collar of my jacket. She went to him with the news, the woman added, thinking she was about to change her whole life. But he slammed the door in her face. That's what I heard. Anyway, I nodded slowly. Makes sense now. She's still around, the woman said softly. But she keeps to herself. Doesn't talk to many people. Looks like someone trying to disappear. I thanked her and walked back to the truck. On the drive home, I didn't feel smug. I didn't feel vindicated. What I felt was something different, like finding the last puzzle piece and realizing the picture was uglier than you thought. She hadn't been disgusted with me. She'd been disgusted with herself. But I was the closest, safest place to dump it. And for a while, I let her. I parked in front of the house, went inside, turned on the porch light out of habit. Then I sat at the kitchen table and looked around the empty room. There wasn't peace in it, but there was clarity. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't holding on to anything that didn't want to be held.